Hi there, and thank you so much for checking out this bullet journal video. August is on the way, and this month I am going for an elaborate cover page with quite a few layers. I don't have enough pages left in this journal to carry on past August, so I thought I'd use up the remaining ones by going ham on the Dutch doors. I'm starting off by decorating around the edge of the page with these, I guess they're roses. I wasn't really thinking too much about it, to be honest. The flowers are just done with a really loose scribbly action, starting in the middle and moving outwards, just building up untidy circles, and then I'm going in and using a darker bullet tip to add a bit of shading so that they aren't just a single coloured blob. And I'm just doing really simple leaves created with just a few strokes of the brush. I really like these pens for this sort of loose work. They have actual bristles rather than being a solid brush nib, and I just use them like a paintbrush. They aren't so good if you want to be really neat, and I find them quite difficult for hand lettering, but yeah, great for loose and expressive stuff. I'll put the details of the brand in the description if you want to check them out. After the roses were done, I started drawing the main focal point, which is a window, or rather wooden window shutters. Of all the brand pens I had, I just could not find the right one, so I ended up choosing this one, which is bordering on orange, but I felt like it was still okay for light wood. But all the others were so dark and just would have ruined the colour palette I had going on. So after I coloured the block in, I used the fine tip end to draw the details of the wood joints in, but I went back to the brush tip at the end to do the shadows cast for the slats in the shutters. This one is a solid brush tip and not a bristle one, and it started to run out as I finished, which was lucky, I suppose, for the front, but also really annoying because I needed to use it again for the inside of the flaps. I did find an Ohuhu marker in my stash that was similar. It was a bit more yellowy than I would have liked, but it was as close as I could get, but I don't think it makes too much of a difference. It's not that noticeable. Then I used a craft knife to cut down the centre and along the top and the bottom, and then I used the back or the blunt edge of the craft knife just to score down the left and right side to make it easier to fold the flaps open to make the window. Before moving on to the background or what's visible through the window, I used a Tombow fudenosuke to do the title and then some stamps to add the year underneath. I didn't really need to add the year, but I wanted to use the stamps on other pages, but hand lettering for the title, so I just added it in to keep it cohesive with the following pages. Okay, so on to what is through the window, and now I'm using some more washi this month, kindly gifted to me by the washi tape shop. These two are from the Metro and Meadow set, and they are so pretty. This video isn't sponsored, but I do have an affiliate code you can use to get 10% off your order at thewashitapeshop.com. Use CadenceC10 at the checkout, and the details are all below in the description. So as I mentioned previously, I'm doing a lot of Dutch doors this time. So for this first page, I'm adding a line of houses, low enough down that they fit with the bottom of the window, and then I trimmed off all the white space above the line of the houses with a craft knife. I think you can probably guess where this is going, but I'm going to build up several layers of houses in this way. The stickers have a white outline, which isn't really visible on the white paper, but I left it in when I cut round them to provide a bit of contrast and help each layer of the buildings be more visible. This idea was originally inspired by Lo-Fi Girl. If you've ever tuned into the live stream on YouTube, you will have seen the lovely scene of her studying with the view through her window of the town outside. If I had that view, I can guarantee no study would be done. I know my version doesn't make a whole lot of sense because it's the outside of a window looking outside rather than inside. But I'm saying it's a window in the garden wall looking out over the town. I really felt like the shutters would look cute, and you generally don't have wooden shutters on the inside of your house, but I'm over explaining it now. I designed it to look nice, not to make sense. Also, does anyone know where Lo-Fi Girl is supposed to live? Because I think it looks a lot like Porto in Portugal. It did take a while to line up all the buildings and cut everything out, but I think it was so worth it. I love how it turned out, especially looking through the window. On the last page, I stuck the buildings to a separate piece of paper and cut it out because I wanted to add a blue sky, and it's quite hard to colour in around the tops of the buildings and keep it neat. It's just easier to colour in a block and stick the houses over the top. I was hoping to be able to not have too much of a streaky finish, but I guess that's just the effect you end up with when using these sorts of pens. I kind of wished I'd painted it instead to avoid that and make it a bit more even, but never mind, I think it's still okay. The first Dutch door had quite a small space at the bottom, but the next one was bigger, so I added a quote. I felt like the scene had a bit of a Studio Ghibli, or Ghibli, however you say it, vibe to it, so I used a quote from The Cat Returns, which I haven't actually watched in years, so I definitely need to rewatch soon. It's always believe in yourself, do this, and no matter where you are, you will have nothing to fear. It's just got a nice positive feel, which I think matches the bright, happy feeling the design gives me. The next page, I made a to-do list. It's a very simple setup. I just used the stamps for the title and then used a very light pink Tombow brush pen to highlight every other line so that it's not just a big area of white space. Then the final page of the front cover ensemble is the calendar. This is quite a small one for me, as I usually spread it over 2 pages, but I think it should be big enough. I don't always write that much in it. I think I just like the look of a big calendar. I used the pink I used for the flowers to do the date lines, and then drew the grid with a black pen. The title, again, I used the stamps and decided to add a few flowers in the minimal gaps to tie in with the front cover. And also I went back over the previous pages and added some more in where I could fit them. Yeah, so that's my my 5-page front cover. I do really love how it turned out. I think it's so cute. And I think it's not wasting pages too much because it is still functional. I have got other things on the other pages, so it's all good. Okay, so the next spread is for my habits and trackers, and again, I'm doing my usual layout. I do change it up sometimes for a bit of variation, but I like this one so much I always come back to it. The top table is to track when I water my plants so that I don't over or underwater anything, and then the lower table is just a list of my habits. I left a gap on either side of the tables for my decoration, and I'm doing that by layering up the houses again. Because they aren't all on separate pages and the washi tape is a bit transparent, I positioned the buildings where I wanted them, and then I trimmed around the edge and removed the bottom layer where they overlapped. It's not that difficult, you just need to make sure not to press too hard with the knife so that you don't go all the way through the paper. It was a little bit time consuming, but again, I think it was worth it to get the houses really defined in their layers. When I stuck all of them down either side, I added some flowers and leaves to the bottoms just to finish off the page and tie it in with the rest of the theme. The next spread was a nice and simple one with no cutting needed. I stuck a row of the buildings along the bottom of the page, and these ones are for my gratitude and memories pages. I'm keeping them symmetrical by adding the titles at the top with the stamps and some florals with the brush pens in the corners, and then adding borders with a fine line pen. I decided to keep the gratitude page less structured again this month and didn't give myself any dates to write things against so that I can write down whatever I feel like rather than keeping to one line a day style. I find that sometimes the gratitude and the memories pages can kind of overlap in the things that I write in them, because quite often the good things that happen go in my memories and then I'm also grateful for those things, so sometimes it can feel a bit repetitious, but I try and find different things in my days other than the memories to be grateful for, and often I try and pick out small things rather than a big thing or a big event. The final spread of the setup is my weeklies, and I've got more Dutch doors going on here. I'm starting off doing the same thing as I did for the decoration on the calendar page. I stuck all the buildings down on a spare piece of dot grid paper and I cut round everything and then coloured in the blue sky area. But before I cut the Dutch doors themselves and stuck everything down, I went back to draw out my boxes. This month I decided to split the space up into squares, and I did 8 boxes and left the last one for a note section. In between all the boxes I added flower sprays, and when drawing in the lines I then avoided the areas where the flowers overlapped the boxes, so they are kind of more in the forefront. And when all the many boxes were drawn out, I cut out each of the Dutch doors and I left little tabs on the top of each page so that they're easier to flip over. I ended up colouring them in shades of pink as I wasn't sure what else I could decorate them with. I usually use a bit of patterned washi tape, but I didn't want to add in any new decoration at the end, and I also didn't want to make it look too busy and detract from the line of buildings above. So I just did this little pink gradient. I am really pleased with how this one turned out, and I had a lot of fun putting it all together. The layered houses look so bright and happy, and I think the addition of the floral design really finished off all the spreads nicely and just added that little bit of freshness to it. I hope you enjoyed this video and maybe it's given you a bit of inspiration. If so, please feel free to leave a like and a comment, and consider subscribing to my channel if you'd like to see more arts and crafts and bullet journals. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!